Could this be America's last election if Donald Trump wins? Listen to what the former president told a Christian group at the Turning Point USA Believers Summit in West Palm Beach. The former president telling the crowd that if they re-elect him to the White House, they won't have to worry about voting ever again.
And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
You guys are great. You beautiful Christians. I'm a Christian. We've covered these individually. I don't know that there's been one segment putting all of these together. And often you will see this not only parroted in media, but you will see this in your day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this helps prepare you for your conversations in your day-to-day life, the rebuttals that you'll most likely hear about Donald Trump and why people don't like his personality. All right, so this right now we can lead in with, do we need to lead in with his Christian thing? Do we think so? Do we think it matters?
I think so.
Okay, yeah. This is the latest example. Yeah. It's not the most egregious, but the media tried to make it sound as though Donald Trump said that he was not a Christian, something. Here you go.
Could this be America's last election if Donald Trump wins? Listen to what the former president told a Christian group at the Turning Point USA Believers Summit in West Palm Beach. The former president telling the crowd that if they re-elect him to the White House, they won't have to worry about voting ever again.
And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
He said it 3 times.
No, he didn't say I'm not a Christian 3 times this week. And he didn't say I'm not a Christian. He said, you guys are great. You beautiful Christians. I'm a Christian. That's it. It's a word whisker. Just like Brian Kilmeade didn't say colored sorority. He said college sorority. When people talk about how much they hate the modern era of clickbait, this is what they are talking about. Yeah. But this is one that kind of died down because most people were able to say, okay, in context, I can see that that's not really what he said. But there are other examples that stuck because they keep throwing crap at the wall and they hope that some stick. And again, you can comment below which ones stick out in your mind as far as the greatest misquotes that they've tried to use to paint Donald Trump's legacy. Here's 5. All references available at loudwithcrowder.com. Big one, and this is why we have the shirts that we do at the shop. So the claim that they made, and they echoed for a very long time, is that President Trump riled up his supporters and encouraged and called for an insurrection by saying and using the words, "fight like hell."
They were considering whether any of the speakers had a legal jeopardy in terms of incitement to riot, which is a charge.
If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Writing as demonstrated in our hearings, we have assembled an overwhelming evidence, including from dozens of your former appointees and staff, that you personally orchestrated and oversaw a multi-part effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election and to obstruct the peaceful transition of power.
We fight. We fight like hell.
That idea comes up in the 2 quotes included in the article of impeachment.
We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
So insurrection, fight like hell. Well, here's the truth that the media doesn't cover, and this is election interference. President Trump said at that very same rally that people needed to make their voices heard peacefully and patriotically. Believe your lying eyes and ears.
Do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. But I said, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can't have happened. And we fight. We fight like hell.
That would seem pretty clear, cut and dry. Again, with the context. Let me provide some more context. Fight like hell is only a call to violence when Donald Trump says it. You know that it's an expression people use, and here are a bunch of people in politics using that expression, not calling for violence.
I'm using every tool at my disposal. I'm going to fight like hell to protect this right for women.
We're going to fight like hell, and we're going to ensure that Joe Biden's the next president so that the working class
keeps moving forward. And we fight like hell to achieve it.
Hi, everybody. It's Gretchen Whitmer. I've been fighting like hell for working people and basic freedoms in Michigan my entire life.
To use the term fight like hell repeatedly in its proper context where no one has a problem with it, and then to weaponize it against President Trump is election interference. Clear? Let's go through another one. Here's the claim that they made. We run into this a lot. People still believe it, that President Trump said, as it related to Charlottesville when someone was killed, and there were some neo-Nazis who happened to be present with tiki torches, that Donald Trump praised neo-Nazis, calling them very fine people.
Let's play some of the sound of President Trump back in 2017, saying he had said today that he answered the question perfectly. Let's take a listen.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as neo, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
The president continues to believe, against all the evidence, that there were very fine people on both sides at the alt-right neo-Nazi white supremacist Unite the Right rally.
Charlottesville is also home to a defining moment for this nation in the last few years. Very fine people on both sides.
Okay, here's the truth. Again, all references available. We provide them for you publicly every day. There were some neo-Nazis and white supremacists who happened to be there in Charlottesville, but it started as a protest regarding people wanted to tear down statues that they saw as indicative of a Confederacy of pro-slavery past, which, by the way, moved on to removing statues of Abraham Lincoln. You can see that sort of logic trail. And then there were people saying, hey, even though these people, some of these statues are of people who were imperfect, it's a part of our heritage. Those were the two major groups clashing in Charlottesville. And then off in the distance, there were some extreme neo-Nazis and white supremacists. But here's the good part. Thank God Donald Trump explicitly condemned by name neo-Nazis and white supremacists in that same clip.
And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people.
That is media malpractice, and that is election interference. What do you think happens with Jewish American voters, black American voters, when they hear, oh my God, the president praised white nationalists and Nazis? Then it also makes it acceptable to say that he is a Nazi. Well, why wouldn't he be a Nazi? Because he praised Nazis. Now it's time to kill Nazis, and you have a Trump assassination attempt that, by the way, Google has memory hold and you can't find any information about. It's election interference. Also, why did Biden really run? Can you comment below? He's like, that's one of the reasons. Really? You were inspired to run by the guy who said, I'm condemning neo-Nazis and white nationalists? That was your flash of... That was your flash of old prick moment?
That was his last straw.
Okay, here's another one. The famous quote, the bloodbath, right? Here's the claim from the left. Trump allegedly said that if he was not elected, according to them, if Trump is not elected, he is threatening a bloodbath in America. A lot of people still believe this.
Former President Donald Trump is taking heat for the language that he used at a rally in Ohio over the weekend, including his warning about what will happen if he does not win the election.
The race for the White House and former President Trump's campaign now on the defensive after his fiery rhetoric at a rally in Dayton, Ohio on Saturday night. Trump warning while discussing the economy that there would be a, quote, bloodbath if he is not reelected in November.
During a campaign rally in Ohio on Saturday, former President Trump promised to place tariffs on cars manufactured abroad if he's reelected, and made a dire prediction of what would happen if he is not.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
Okay, so bloodbath, 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 bloodbath. If I'm not elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the country. Here's the truth. And that last man kind of mentioned it. He was talking about trade with China and how China are dumping cars in the United States. And he was saying that for the automobile industry, if Biden, at that point was still the candidate, were to be reelected, it would be a bloodbath for the auto industry. But believe your lying eyes and ears, here's the clip in context.
Those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, And you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars.
Just like the fight like hell example, bloodbath, it's something that has been used repeatedly. This is election interference. I want to be very clear. The media malpractice has now, it's now veered into election interference. We saw with the Hunter Biden laptop story, what you don't see is this kind of malpractice happening every day. Here's another one, another claim that you have seen from the left, that Donald Trump, if you believe them, he flat out promised to you that he was going to be a dictator.
Donald Trump reacting to reports about what a second term would look like and concerns that he would govern as an authoritarian. Donald Trump is no longer merely suggesting he'll be a dictator should he win a second term. Now, he's just coming right out and he's saying it.
Last night in a Fox News town hall, Sean Hannity asked Donald Trump twice, coaching him along as he often does in these interviews, if Trump planned to abuse his power if elected to a second term. Trump told the Iowa audience he would not be a dictator except for on his first day in office.
Overnight during a taped town hall in Iowa, former President Trump mocking questions about turning the presidency into a dictatorship. Moderator Sean Hannity asking Mr. Trump if he had any plans to abuse his power or break the law if he were reelected, or to seek retribution against others.
I love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
So, if you watch the mainstream media, legacy media, you're going to look, oh my God, he said he's going to be a dictator. He praised neo-Nazis. Here's the truth. Well, first off, President Trump obviously is not a dictator. Otherwise, Biden wouldn't have been sworn in.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see what's going on in Venezuela. A little bit of a different picture. Yep. And he made a tongue-in-cheek remark about closing the border, drilling. It was clearly a joke. And people who see it in context would know that.
Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight, you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
for?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's not retribution.
I'm going to be, you know, he keeps, we love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
Which, by the way, also, if you understand contextually, 89 executive orders from Biden on the border undoing what Donald Trump did, and of course executive orders on federal leases for drilling. So it's not really a dictator type thing. It's actually one of the few issues that falls itself legitimately under the presidential purview, which you've seen from George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. But the media wants you to believe that he would be a dictator because I guess they don't understand the separation of powers. Here's another one because Joe Biden just quoted this in the recent debate before he unceremoniously dropped out. Here's the claim that President Trump said during COVID it could be cured by injecting bleach into your arm.
Cleanup in the Oval Office. President Trump is finding it hard to explain away his dangerous suggestion that Americans could inject themselves with disinfectants as a cure for the coronavirus.
I just reminded you of when President Trump floated the idea of injecting disinfectants to knock out coronavirus.
Medical experts are warning people not to inject themselves with disinfectants after President Trump pondered at last night's White House briefing whether that could be a potential method for fighting the virus.
The disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute, and is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
All right, so we want to bring in Major Garrett. He's standing by at the White House to sort of just walk us through what the president had to say.
Not the White House.
And the talking points from the DNC, which go to the media, are then echoed by former Vice President Biden at that debate where he took it one step further along with MSNBC and the Young Turks. And he said, this is the guy who told you to inject bleach. He said those actual words. Here's the truth. President Trump never suggested that people themselves inject bleach or themselves inject disinfectant. He was talking about during this period of time. And by the way, he was also right. People mocked him because he said there may be ways to re-sanitize masks because we were throwing them out. That became a thing. People started using effective methods of steam closets to re-sanitize masks. And he was talking about other forms of interventions that could possibly treat the COVID virus. And yeah, he's not a doctor. In context.
I would like you to speak to the medical doctors to see if there's any way that you can apply light and heat to cure. You know, that if you could, and maybe you can, maybe you can't. Again, I say maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not a doctor.
That was another thing he was talking about. I don't know if you know this. They do use sometimes UV light. They do use sometimes as a disinfectant. There are methods where they actually try and use sometimes infrared waves, UV light. He's not a doctor. He didn't tell anyone to inject bleach. Here's another one, kind of a bonus one, where they claim that Donald Trump referred to countries as shitholes.
But in a private meeting, a proposal to restore protections to immigrants from Haiti, El Salvador, and certain African countries who were until recently protected from deportation reportedly prompted the president to question, why are we having all these people from hole countries come here?
Now that one's true.
Still funny.
You really said that one.
Because it's true.
Oh, the old Gavin. I like it.
Full of Gavin.
I say it all the time. What he really meant was countries that are comparable to holes of shit, like Haiti, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good,
yeah, the barbecue.
Oh, jeez.
And they shit in holes.
You're not supposed to eat where you shit.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Congo. That's another one that well, you know what?
Same guy.
See, there is a pattern. Yeah. That's what they often do. So let's put this all together. If you are a voter who tunes into legacy media, or if you rely on Google, on Facebook, on a lot of these big tech platforms, you believe that Donald Trump tried to overturn an election, calling for an insurrection, telling people to fight like hell and violently, as opposed to what he actually said, which is make your voices heard peacefully and patriotically. You would believe that he praised Nazis. He praised Nazis and white supremacists, calling them very fine people, as opposed to him actually condemning them. You would believe that he said he was going to be a dictator day one, even though, of course, there's no truth to that whatsoever. You believe that this man said there will be a bloodbath if I don't win this election, if I lose this election, there will be a bloodbath, which of course would lend itself to the idea that he is a would-be dictator and an insurrectionist, even though none of those things are true. And that kind of rhetoric, which we now know to be untrue, is what inspired somebody to attempt to take the man's life. But if you search that on Google, you can't find it either. This is no longer a free country. And I don't want to hear BS about the First Amendment protecting these big tech platforms. This is election interference. It affects what people believe. It affects the vote. And it affects people being killed in the streets, including the will-be president of the United States. They cannot win an election fairly, and they know it.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.